more from there. And if the information I have in front of me is indeed correct, that also means that we have a few other considerations as well. Andres Cardenas, who sits just 5 points back from Griffin Peebles in the fight for the championship. He starts from 8th place, Cardenas, and Peebles, if the information I have in front of me is correct, is starting in 20th place. That is more than a little alarming for the Spanish licensed Australian driver as he works his way up the order. Griffin celebrating his leap year birthday with us. He's a 29th of February baby, and he celebrated his 16th/4th birthday with us last week, and he'll be looking to try and hold on to that championship win, championship lead I should say, to try and win the Formula One series, following in the footsteps of Kasper Stuka, who took the championship of course last year. He is now moving up the world in single-seaters, having also won the Italian F4 championship over the course of 2023. He's now signed to a junior deal with Red Bull, and in general seems to be moving up the world. Speaking of Red Bull juniors, through shot there went Enzo Tarnvanichkal. Enzo, who has been a really exciting young prospect in the world of karting, a world karting champion back in 2022. We saw him racing for the first time with us in Aragon, his first ever appearances in single-seater car racing, and he is one that is tipped by many to be a hot prospect in the future. But the information that I have regarding the grid, which I'm hesitant to fully believe, because obviously we are yet to see a grid sheet published, but he's 26th per the information I've got in front of me. So that means he is going to have his work cut out for him in a serious way as they work their way through the first few laps. To be in the midfield here in these conditions is to sign up for a face full of spray and a lack of visibility, unfortunately. So a lot of these drivers are really going to have to work on instinct alone. And it's impressive that so many of these drivers do have those instincts baked in at such an early age. Of course, we're talking about in a lot of cases 15, 16-year-old drivers here, and yet they already have a decade's worth of racing experience through the world of karting at their fingertips. It is very, very impressive. We do have a few drivers, of course, who are slightly older, into their second, maybe third season of Formula 4 in some cases. Others who have come into Formula 4 having gone down a different route prior. For example, Ella Lloyd, who's in her second weekend in a single-seater after joining us in Aragon with Rodin. She's 18, and she's previously raced in Ginettas through the GT5 category, and before that Ginetta Juniors. Also now 18 is Gianmarco Pradell. Happy birthday for yesterday, Gianmarco, the US racing driver who we've seen on the podium a few times already. He is now 18, having celebrated his birthday in the paddock yesterday. US Racing even had the balloons ready to go. Very considerate. And he'll be looking to try and seal his season off with a victory. You can see how treacherous the conditions are out there. That's Keanu Alazari, one of our favourites, just having a bit of a moment down there on the grid. So Izzy Browning, even the approach to the grid is treacherous. This race is going to be very, very hard work.
Hello everyone, welcome down to the grid. Yeah, treacherous is probably the correct word. As you said, Keanu Alazari having a bit of a moment on the grid. It is definitely still wet down here, I can tell you that for free. You can probably see everybody's got their raincoats on. We are just waiting for our pole sitter to come down. As Adam said, our pole sitter is going to be Adam Hideg. Pretty good going for the Yenza guys. They're pretty glad to be starting on that pole position, but obviously they are the first ones to discover the conditions, and the conditions are looking anything but kind. So I am going to see if we can get a word with our pole sitter, but the team's kind of in there at the moment, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to talk to our pole sitter. Are we able to have a quick word, Adam? Able to have a quick word? pole position. This is going to be quite a treacherous race. So how are we feeling ahead of this?
Yeah, it will be a tricky race. Now it's just we are in the front, so it looks like it's quite wet. So we need a good restart and then just go in front and hope for the best.
One of the first pole positions for the Yenza team on this Formula Winter Series grid. So are you feeling nervous at all?
Not really. I trust the team, so I think we have a good setup and let's have a nice race.
All right, well, best of luck. Thank you for speaking to us. Yeah, so there is our pole sitter. We are just now seeing Matthias Ferreira come in. I'm also going to see if I can grab a word because he is kind of in with an outside shot of the championship. Adam's already explained to you. There's two that are more likely to take the championship, but he fancies his chances as well. Matthias, can we just grab a quick word with you? You're starting from a pretty good position. Obviously, things are going to be pretty treacherous out there. So, first run down to turn 1 is a long one. How are we feeling?
I mean, it's my first time here in this track, and also in the weather is a bit hard. So I'll just give my best. I'm still in the fight for the championship. So, yeah, let's see what happens.
You missed our last round in Aragon, but you're back, and I saw on Instagram a couple of days ago you're ready to go for this championship, aren't you?
Yeah, even missing one round, I'm still in the fight. So yeah, I'll give my best, and let's see what happens.
Best of luck. Thanks for speaking to us. Right, as you can see, it's still getting pretty wet. So we're going to see if we can take a little bit of a walk down. We are just about to get the 1 minute boards. We've got Jan Brzezowski. He also missed the Aragon round. He's now back with us. And Akshay Bora. Akshay has had a really consistent season. A lot of points finishes. A shame not so good a weekend in Aragon, but definitely hoping to be back in those consistent places this weekend. And as we do that, we get the 1 minute board. So we're going to go to an ad break and then we'll get this race underway.
Well, you can see the rain lights on the back of the cars, and that's going to be the story in this Formula Winter Series race. The conditions are certainly looking lively. The 15-second board is out. As you can see on the tower in the back of shot, as you saw on the grid down with Izzy, it is Adam Hideg who is set to lead them away as this race rolls for the formation lap. Adam Hideg starting from pole position alongside Matthias Ferreira. Third place on the grid is Jan Pusharovsky. In fourth place is Akshay Bora. Ernesto Rivera and Keanu Alazari start from row 3. Row 4 of the grid, Kabir Anurag alongside Andres Cardenas, Flavio Olivieri and Rene Lammers round out the top 10. Peter Bazinelos in 11th place and Enia Fry in 12th position. 13th place for Mikael Pedersen alongside Arthur Dorizon, Nathan Ty and Thomas Strauben in 15th and 16th. Looks like one of the Technicar machines hasn't gotten off the line there in the back of shot. Maxime Riemann, Douwe de Decker in 17th and 18th. Moving on to row 10, Gianmarco Pradel and Griffin Peebles. Peebles, who leads the championship, he starts from 20th. Maciej Guadish also a long way down. He'll start from 21st alongside Edouard Bonia. Lucas Flusha in 23rd place. Jack Beaton from 24th. A lot of cars that we expect up the front out of position. René Francot in 25th place in the car that was previously driven by Via Block. Enzo Tarnvanichkal in 26th. Harrison, Savinkov, Filippo Fiorentino and Lenny Reed round out the top 30. Row 16 of the grid is Victor Dobzhansky and Ella Lloyd. Kiko Macedo starts from 33rd on the grid. Lorenzo Castillo to start from 34th. Preston Lambert and Nathaniel Berraby line up the back row of the grid. Just the 18 rows on this occasion, only, in quotation marked, 36 starters for this one. The race has gotten underway under safety car conditions, so the clock is already ticking on this race with 28 minutes and change left to go. I suspect that we'll see 2 laps under safety car, and then they'll start to consider potentially getting the race underway under green flag conditions, as we saw just a few moments ago in the GT4 race. But the clock is ticking, 27 minutes, 52 left to go. And we are under safety car conditions. Of course, that means that Hideg doesn't have to worry about a standing start with Us Racing's Matthias Ferreira just a few yards behind him. And so Ferreira from second place will be looking to try and get the best run possible out of the last couple of corners and on to the main straight. But for Adam Hideg, this is quite the opportunity that has been parked in front of him here. And for Yenza Motorsport as well. They've really, to be completely honest, scarcely appeared within the top 10 this season. A couple of instances of running in the top 10 for Yenza. But for Adam Hideg, it is a really golden opportunity to try and get their best result of the season and maybe get a big #1 trophy to go along with it. That would be the ideal scenario, I'm sure. Cars then onto the main straight with that safety car out there. As you can see, the race distance for this one is the half-hour duration plus 1 lap. So once the clock hits 0, the lap that we're on at that point will be the penultimate lap. They'll cross the line once more onto the final lap, and then the checkered flag will wave from there. Unlike our other 3 championships, there's no chance that this first race is going to decide the title one way or the other. However, if Andres Cardenas, there in 8th place, can score some points, there he goes through shot in the 18 car. If he can score some points and Griffin Peebles down in 20th can't make enough headway to score any of his own, then that will be a big swing in the championship consideration. Just 5 points between them. Griffin Peebles on 121, Andres Cardenas on 116. We run the F1 point system here, so points scored in the top 10, 25 for a win. 10th place will score you just the 1 point. So it is very much an important thing to be in that top 10, which is something Cardenas can quite easily achieve from 8th. For Griffin Peebles, he's got a lot more work to do from P20. There he is, just behind Gianmarco Pradel, going through shot. And quite the trio of machinery there. Red flag, though, has been put out on the circuit. Now, I'm unclear as to why the red flag has gone out. The red flag has been declared. Have to see quite what the justification is in due course. The red flag has been put out onto the circuit, which to me suggests that they're not ready to start. I don't think there's anywhere there is a car off. I'm just hearing from some of the cam ops VRR director Rob that we have potentially got some more rain going on now around the circuit. You can see the water falling from the sky onto the circuit, and it does seem to have been getting worse over the last couple of minutes. So they have red flagged this race for the time being. I think under these circumstances, the cars will now line up one by one in the pit lane. I believe that is the standard protocol. I'm glad, for the sake of everyone's blushes at least, that the red flag isn't to rescue anyone from the crane. We do, however, have a car slowing there briefly at turn 13. I didn't see quite who that was, but I thought it might have been Andres Cardenas. He's now running, though, at full pace. Everybody just stacking up here, of course, as they slow down to enter the pit lane. But the red flag is out then, and we will hopefully... the 11 car, I'm being told, has retired. So that is, unfortunately, Enzo Tarnvinichkal. So I don't know if he's stopped around the circuit or whether he's come into the garage, but Tarnvinichkal is in the garage. So Tarnvinichkal having an issue. So we'll see hopefully some more information as to what has caused the red flag in due course. Again, the safe bet, the wise money, would be on the worsening weather conditions around the circuit. We'll see if there are any external factors to consider. For now, red flags out. That means that all of our drivers head back into pit lane. Of course, the last place you want to be under these conditions is parked in an open top car. It'll puddle up pretty quickly in there, unfortunately. No one wants this race to happen more than Adam Hideg, of course. He has been presented this absolutely golden opportunity to work his way up the order, work his way into the winner's circle for the 2024 Formula One Series season. An elite club of drivers among this 30-plus car grid are able to take a win. And to add your name to that list is to prove quite the point going into the summer and the remainder of your single-seater career. Hideg would love for this race to take place, but for now, the red flags are out there. And we understand it is purely down to, more than likely, purely down to the weather conditions, because we have obviously got our camera ops around the circuit and no one has reported anything like an incident out there on the track. So this is more than likely purely down to the weather. I understand that Enzo Tarnvinichkal, his reason for entering the garage on the first formation lap, or the first lap under safety car as the race started, was a steering issue. So they're trying to resolve that at the moment down at Campos. The 11 crew working hard to try and get that car going again. But for Campos' Enzo Tarnvinichkal, he seemingly has had to report a problem, and it's not one that can be worked on from the comfort or lack of comfort that is the fast lane, and they have had to bring that car into the garage. Edouard Borgna at the moment then in the 27 Yenza Motorsport car, of course one of 4 Yenzas out there on the circuit, the first of them being car that was leading under safety car conditions as the race got underway, Adam Hideg. There's Maciej Guadish then, the rookie that has really set alight the championship. He sits 3rd in the championship. It's this man with a lot of eyes on him though, Griffin Peebles, and that is a very closed umbrella. Well, it's an open umbrella, but it's closed in on him to, I think, make sure he gets minimal interruption as he gets his head in the game for the race. He'll have to start this one from all the way back in 20th, assuming we do get to go back to green flag conditions. And he is laser focused at the task at hand, and that task for this race is going to be to try and get himself into those points by hook or by crook. It's going to be a very tricky race for him when this one resumes. You can see the wet Hankook tyres there on the car. Lots of tread on those. Heard a few good things about the Hankook tyres from our drivers, Bianca Bustamante, who of course is racing this weekend in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia with the Formula One, with the F1 Academy. She said some pretty glowing things about the Hankooks on her first experience with them at Jerez. Gianmarco Pradell there, just ahead of Peebles. This really is 3 very fast drivers there in the form of Peebles and championship leader Peebles, Maciej Guadish and Gianmarco Pradell in 19th, 20th and 21st. That is not where we'd expect them to be under normal circumstances on the grid. But it was practice times that ultimately decided the order for this one, as opposed to qualifying, since the qualifying effectively didn't take place. And as a result of that, Adam Hideg, with that pole position, I think he will have been as surprised as anybody once it all shook out and he ended up with the pole, but it's an opportunity he'll take with both hands. Same applies, of course, to Andres Cardenas. The fact that he is up there in the top 10 in a point-scoring position with just 5 points between himself and championship leader Griffin Peebles, that is an opportunity he probably wouldn't have expected. He wouldn't think that someone like Griffin would be 20th on the grid. But since that's how it's shaken out, he can only try and take advantage. And from P7, he will do his best to do that. I say P7 because Ernesto Rivera, who was in the 5th place, he was the driver that I mentioned, slowing down, coming through turn 13 and 14. So Rivera, I suspect, will be shuffled back up to 5th, but he was registered 10th across the line. That is because he slowed down there as the cars came back into the pit lane. So I suspect Cardenas will ultimately resume the race from P8. This is all, of course, under the assumption that the race is resumed, because it is, as you can see on the shot, pretty torrential down there. One driver who's done some wet racing before is Ella Lloyd. However, the last time she did that, she had a roof over her head. Not so much luck this time, though, for Ella in her second weekend of single-seater racing. She, however, is down with Izzy Browning.
Come down into the pit lane, and we've managed to find Ella Lloyd, who's going to give us a chat, and she's somewhat sheltering me at the moment, so I appreciate it. Ella, just tell us how the conditions are out there.
Yeah, obviously it's quite wet. It's like qualifying was going in the got camp, so it's not too bad. It's just really like wind coming across the track, but like the spray is the most difficult part because obviously you can't see the car in front, but just got to get on with it. We used to do it from the UK.
And this is like some of your first single-seater races, so is this anything like you've done before?
Well, the weather's like quite similar to back home, obviously with the rain, and I'm quite used to driving in the west, so it's just basically the same and just got to stay offline.
You've had some fantastic pace out there last weekend in your debut, so we're kind of waiting to see if you could do it again once we get the race restarted, aren't we?
Yeah, hopefully we can do the same again with a good pace, and the team's doing an amazing job, so I can't thank them enough.
Perfect. Best of luck. Thank you for speaking to us. Adam, that's it from down here in the pit lane. We'll head back up to you.
Thanks to Ella Lloyd and her umbrella there, keeping Izzy safe from the conditions at least a little during that interview. Course car heading around the circuit, I think doing a track inspection, one would assume. In these difficult conditions, safety is always the priority, and they're just wanting, I think, to make sure that we don't send these drivers into green flag conditions with a circuit that isn't really ready for them. And so I think with the rain increasing, ramping up over the last several minutes, the decision was taken to err on the side of caution and just hope that this rain is only momentary. It is just coming up on 3 o'clock local time here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. And my understanding has been that weather will ease up significantly around the 4 o'clock bracket. So hopefully we will get some drier conditions, or not drier, but at least less abrasive rain to contend with across the day, which will in turn make the circuit tenable for racing once again. You can see there some of the construction works that are being done to this Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. It is very much an active building site as well as a racing circuit at the moment, for better or worse. Quite the mega project that's going on in order to present a new look facility for the Spanish Grand Prix in a couple of months' time. I can tell you that they are working at a pace. There is a kind of additional cover going over the top of the pit building, and it wasn't there at all when we arrived to the circuit on Wednesday. It's now about half finished, and it's Saturday. Nonetheless, 3 days, and they've managed to do quite a lot of work, quite a lot of noticeable work within the paddock and pit area in the time that we've been here. This rain won't be helping them. It's certainly not helping us either around the circuit. The weather is certainly a cruel and harsh mistress at the best of times. We've had a lot of temperamental weather over the course of the last few months here in the Winter Series paddock. We've had a few rainy days, and then immediately thereafter a few sunny days afterwards as well. And actually, I must credit my sources at times like this. And Markus Giedlich, obviously the founder of Giedlich Racing, the man behind the Winter Series package, he actually tipped me in on the El Nino Southern Oscillation weather phenomenon, which tends to happen in this region every 6 to 8 years. And that often does lead to increased rain, and that is quite possibly what we're seeing this year. It's a climate phenomenon that means we get periodical high winds, rain, a little more than you expect in tropical areas. And yeah, that could well be what's happened this year, because it has been rather treacherous out there at times this year. Of course, we have had some absolutely gorgeous days of racing as well. Motorland Aragon, while often windy, we were greeted with quite a nice amount of sunshine across that weekend. Portimao, as rainy as it was on Thursday, Friday, the race days were absolutely gorgeous at the tail end of January. On Saturday and Sunday, I think we were nudging 20 degrees Celsius in January, which for British people like myself and the Alpha Live crew is absolutely unheard of, uncharted and much welcome territory. Unfortunately, we have the Largo del Granollers to deal with this weekend. The Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya looking very much puddled up at the moment. A few lakes forming on the circuit, although it doesn't look like the rain is falling quite as hard around the track as it was a few minutes ago, which gives me cautious optimism that this won't be too long of a delay. So then, the race under red flags. If you are joining us for the first time on the stream, the race for the Formula Wind Series, race 1 of the weekend, currently under red flag conditions. This is because, we assume at least, that this is because of the rain. There has not been any active incident. The race began under safety car. We're expecting at least 2 laps under safety car. And with just on 4¼ minutes completed, the red flag was thrown as the rain got heavier out on circuit. The rain does appear to be quelling at least a little bit at the moment now, which hopefully means we're going to have a return to racing action before too long. For now, the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya Seat, or Cupra, as I should say, to avoid any telling off, is currently lapping the circuit and just scoping out the conditions. There'll be a representative from race control or the stewards in the car, keeping an eye on the conditions as well. But that sign there rather tells the story. That's quite a nice dynamic graphic. That's not bad at all. But I don't think the drivers would need to be informed by the light boards that the rain is falling. They can certainly see it for themselves and feel it for themselves at the moment. You see everyone using those umbrellas for their secondary purpose, unfortunately. We'd love to be using the umbrellas, for their primary purpose, I should say. Rain is the primary reason, of course. But we'd love to be using it for the secondary purpose of keeping the sunshine away, more like a parasol. But unfortunately, we are having to shield from the rain down there in the grid. Some 36 cars taking the start. We've had record entries of 38 cars all season, 36 this weekend, and one of the biggest ones to watch is Andrés Cardenas.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones to watch is one of our title contenders, Andrés Cardenas, and I've managed to get him down here. So, Andrés, I mean, we've not had much running, but this is looking pretty good for you with people so far behind you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, of course. It's the case to add points. Obviously, the track is very wet, I reckon, so yeah, it's gonna be tough, but for now, we're looking good.
And conditions are obviously pretty treacherous. We're hoping that we'll get you guys back out there soon. But how do you reset? How do you keep focused inside the car at this point?
I think about the target, of course. My target is, of course, the championship, and I want to win it. So, of course, I need to stay focused in situations like this and don't lose my mind.
And just what would it mean for you to win this championship and take it home before the summer season starts?
Of course, it's an honor, of course, to win a title in this level of motorsport. Something I've always dreamed of, and yeah, it would be great, of course.
And just finally, a more difficult weekend for yourself and your title rival Griffin in Aragon. So coming into this weekend, is this a track that you think is going to suit you? Are you going to be able to kind of claw it back a little bit? Obviously, it's not too much of a deficit, only 5 points, but do we feel confident on this track?
Yeah, of course, it's a track that I've had a lot of experience in. And in Motorland, I mean, we had pace, but some circumstances, of course, crashes, different things. But feeling confident about this track, show okay pace, and yeah, we need to work on it.
Is there? We just kind of, seeing as we've got some time, we just kind of want to talk a little bit about the track itself. So it's a lot of long right-handers on this track. That's going to be tomorrow in the dry, potentially quite punishing on the left tyres. So how do you, as a young driver, you learn how to do that tyre management and kind of keep them intact so you've got something at the end of the race?
Yeah, of course, it's very tough. Like I just said, in the front left, this track generates a lot of graining, like overall wear on all the tires because it's such a high lateral, let's say, energy track. From the get-go, I mean, we work on the simulator, this type of things, and yeah, it's very important to work on this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that insight. Thank you very much for speaking to us and filling our red flag with some interest. We wish you the best of luck this weekend, and thank you for speaking to us. There's one of our title contenders, Andres Cardenas. We're going to head back up to Adam.
Thank you very much, Izzy. Andres Cardenas then has some work to do from P7. However, he will be in the points, hopefully, when this race resumes. I like the fact that we're getting waving. Hello to everyone in the grandstand. Wave if you can hear us. Everyone sees the big screen, the podium screen that serves as the backdrop to our ceremonies, is actually broadcasting our live pictures to the grandstand as well during the races, which means that everyone can see exactly when they're on television. So we're going to get a lot of this across the weekend. Hello, guys. Hope you're having fun out there. They've got something of a shelter over their heads, which is more than can be said for some around the circuit. Some of the seating area around, a covered seating area, but I think some of the marshals are rather unfortunately stuck there in their several layers of waterproofs. Akshay Bora, meanwhile, from fourth position. We heard a little bit about Akshay earlier on from Izzy, that he's had a very consistent year, and consistent is absolutely the word for him. Currently in the championship points, he sits in 9th. Unfortunately, consistent for most of the season, but then had a bit of a rough run of it in Aragon, as Izzy alluded to. Maciej Guadish, of course, also had what one would describe as a rough Saturday at the Formula Wind Series race in Aragon. Didn't get started, didn't get off the line, and was collected by Carrie Schreiner, who in turn tagged James Ernesto Rivera, as a matter of fact. So it was a 3-car incident there. Thankfully, all drivers were okay. Of course, Carrie has been racing in F1 Academy this weekend, so she's all good after that collision. And Maciej's team, the MP Motorsport squad, put in a mighty shift. I think something in the region of 2 to 3 a.m. was when finally the mechanics were able to leave at the conclusion of the day. Sunday morning, 2, 3 a.m., when they had to be back out and on the circuit probably something like 4 or 5 hours later in the garages. That was certainly not a particularly positive schedule for them, but they succeeded in what quite a few people in the paddock thought wouldn't be possible, and that was repairing the car that had heavy rear end damage after race 1 in Aragon. And Maciej somewhat repaid them with a rookie class win in the third and final race of the weekend. Was very impressed by Maciej's ability to almost dust himself off after that one, it must be said. It was a difficult day for Maciej. We spoke to him with Izzy shortly after the incident, and you could tell that he was a bit shaken up, but he's collected himself nicely. He's been on decent pace this weekend. However, the conditions are still pretty bad, and obviously the conditions earlier on meant that the practice times were the main factor in forming the grid, and that hasn't worked out in Maciej's favour. However, I suspect that come Quali 2 tomorrow morning, we'll see a bit more of his true pace, and if and when we get this race back underway, we will hopefully get a true picture of Maciej's pace. If his previous performances are anything to go by, he'll be making up a few positions. Of course, the Formula cars aren't allowed out there on the circuit, and the same, frankly, at the moment would apply to both the GTs and the prototypes also. So one would anticipate this is going to be a fairly lengthy delay for the time being. You can see the water still pooling up and falling on the circuit. We've just got a bulletin through from race control that the session will not restart. So session will not restart is what we've just been told. So this race under red flag after just a couple of minutes of running is now confirmed not to be restarted. That is the latest that has come through just a matter of moments ago on our timing screens. Now that means that the pits are about to become very, very busy as everyone pushes themselves back into the garages. But the session will not restart. Geographically quite useful is the fact that the cars are on the pit exit end of the grid in Formula anyway in the garage plan, so they won't have to do too much work to push a lot of them. But the session will not be restarted in the Formula Winter Series. Whether the race will be rescheduled or whether we'll take results from the limited running we had, or whether the race is completely nullified, we'll have to wait and see. 2 laps were completed, near as makes no difference, under safety car, and I know that in the other categories we do have 2 laps to get half points. Whether that's the situation we'll end up with here, I don't quite know, because we didn't officially complete the second lap, I don't think, before this red flag was declared. We were on the second lap behind safety car when that happened, so we'll have to see what is worked out there. Goodness me, it's looking quite slippery there, isn't it, judging by the gait of that MP Motorsport Marshal as he legged it towards Keanu Al-Azhari's car. Akshay Bora getting out of the car and helping with the push, which is probably quite a wise decision as well, but everybody will be disappointed that this is the circumstance. But obviously safety is always the priority and the primary consideration. And here at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, that first Formula Winter Series race has now been put into session will not restart. I won't say declared, that was the word I was going to end that sentence with, because we don't know whether or not there will be plans afoot to have the race at another time, or whether or not we simply declare the results from the red flag, etc., etc. There are a few different possibilities, but what we can tell you is that unfortunately we're not going to get a Formula Winter Series race for the time being. I do note that a few of our GT cars had the lights on down in the garages, so whether or not we're going to now proceed on to the scheduled GT Winter Series race, I do not know. I suppose the Formula cars slightly more amenable to issues in these conditions, or slightly more prone to issues in these conditions than the GTs. GT's a little more amenable to racing in near torrential conditions. So maybe we will get some more racing with the GTs. We'll wait and see what kind of information is put forward. But for now, I'm telling you all I know, and that's all I can do. There is the Cram car then, the number 37 machine. Obviously, the 35 Flavio Olivieri has sometimes been knocking on the door of the top 10 this season. There is the 35 car in shot as well for Filippo Fiorentino. He would like to get some top 20s, maybe even try and score some points in that top 10 on this weekend. It's something he's yet to achieve in this season. Do admire the Cram cars. They are very well turned out machines with more than a whiff of Williams Academy colours about them to my eye. I am a proud member of the Dark Blue Race Cars Appreciation Society, Force One Vipers and Prost F1 cars, things of that nature. You see there as well, there's something on fire outside the circuit. We've had a couple of cameramen take pictures of that and show it to us. We're not sure quite what that is, that plume of smoke that you've been seeing in some of the shots. But I doubt that has any knock-on effect to our racing. It's unfortunately more down to the rainfall that we are having here in the Barcelona region on this Saturday afternoon. Preparing some clips for the Wind Series Instagram accounts earlier on. Really did hit home just how different Friday was from Saturday. A complete change of temperament, climate, etc., over the course of the last 24 hours. Friday was a very sunny, most picturesque day. Talking of picturesque, I must extend my thanks to our series photographer Daniel Bjergen, who very kindly lends me his spare hardware on occasion and brings me out to the track so I can try and remember some of the things I learned in A-level photography. Thank you for that, Daniel. You can see some of the less questionable results of that on my Instagram feed if you're interested. But the conditions on Saturday, a lot less like a photographer's dream. We're not getting a golden hour tonight, that much I can confirm. We are not going to get a picturesque sunset. We are hopefully going to get some more racing in due course, however. So we will again await information as and when it comes. But the next race on the schedule was scheduled to be the GT Winter Series. Have had some driver nomination updates there, incidentally, and then one of the more interesting updates on that front is that when we do have a GT Win Series Race 1, we're going to have a couple of unexpected pro drivers in that race. The first two races, the first two sprints, typically in GT Win Series, will be the domain of the amateur of the two drivers, if there is such a thing. See, for example, the De Beermacher racing team, who sadly aren't with us after damaging their Ferrari in Aragon, but Francesco Lopez is the driver coach to Uwe Lauer. Lauer will do both sprint races and then share the car with Lopez in the 55-minute Enduro. On this occasion, though, Milos Pavlovic for Autosport Racing, the number 30 all-carbon fibre Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo 2, he is actually set to race in the first race, which is quite an interesting development. As will Manuel Lauck in the Proton Huber competition Porsche 992 GT3R. So that car on its first weekend in the GT Win Series will have Manuel Lauck at the wheel for race number 1. The GT Winter Series as a whole with a huge development, a huge number of cars on the grid. So then the GT Winter Series will, in theory, be our next on-track action, provisionally speaking, but we are again waiting for information from race control, from organisers and so on. And we'll have updates for you as and when they arrive at our desk, but for the time being, everybody is just trying to work this out. And of course, the one thing we cannot control, the one thing we cannot work against particularly, is the weather. Until it improves, we have to make do with what we have. It doesn't look like it's falling too hard right now, the rain out on the circuit. And again, I feel like I'm hearing a selection of idling engines from across the circuit. My commentary box, incidentally, if you're interested in this kind of thing, is in that main grandstand, which is geographically challenging, for that means I'm away from the paddock, but it does mean I have a very good view of what's going on in some of the garages. So then, I understand that back in Formula One Series world, Izzy Browning has bumped into Adam Hideg. So let's go down to the young Yenza Motorsport driver.
I have indeed. I've got Adam Hideg, our pole sitter from that race. The race that wasn't really a race in the end. So Adam, how was it out there?
Yeah, we just did 2 laps behind the safety car. It was, for me, it was quite okay because only the safety car was in front of me, so I could be in clean visibility. But behind me, I think it was quite tough, quite similar to the qualifying. Also, when I was driving there, it was just not a lot to see. So yeah, it was, I don't know, from my side, it was quite okay. I was leading the pack. But yeah, for the others, for sure, it was not easy. But yeah, now I'm waiting for the results because I think we crossed the line twice, so I think it has to be half points. And yeah, I'm waiting and let's see.
And obviously we've not had much of a race today, but can it give you some sort of learning for tomorrow when you get back out there?
Yeah, today was not a lot of driving. I think 1 lap in the quali, 2 laps now, behind the safety cars. So yeah, but yeah, yesterday the speed was quite good in dry conditions, so we actually made the fastest time. But even there was a small mistake in my lap. So yeah, I think I'm looking forward for tomorrow. I think we have a good speed, and then let's go for it.
And it seems like you've come on in the last couple of weeks because you had a decent weekend in Aragon as well. So do you feel like you've taken some confidence into this weekend, having done well in Aragon?
Yeah, indeed. So first 2 weekends was not easy. First weekends in Formulas. Then in Aragon was a lot better. We were struggling a bit in the quali. We did some mistake. But then the races were very good, so we could move up a lot of places. We scored our first points, first rookie podiums, and now, yeah, here we were immediately a lot better. And yeah, the free practices were quite nice, and now looking forward for the races.
All right, well, we'll hope we get you out on track tomorrow then.
Yeah, hopefully.
Perfect, thank you. Best of luck for tomorrow, and thank you for speaking to us as our pole sitter from that race, Adam Hideg. He'll be hoping to get out on track tomorrow and get some good results like he just said there. So we'll head back up to Adam and see if we can bump into anyone else.
Thank you very much, Izzy. Just coming up on some positive news in the last few moments. We are expecting the pit lane to open, the pit exit to open at 15:30 local time, in other words, about 11 minutes, at which point the GT Win Series cars will head out onto the circuit. So we have been hearing the timbre of GT racing engines from across the way, and sure enough, we will indeed have a GT Win Series race starting under the safety car for at least 2 laps, as is protocol in these kind of conditions. So we are going to see the GT Winter Series drivers rolling out there within the next few minutes. The grid for that race is certainly a very compelling one. 2 Mercedes AMGs set to start from the front. 2 very different drivers though. The young charger J-Mo Hartling, who is on the verge of securing a GT Win Series title along with his cohort and co-driver Kenneth Hyatt. He starts from second on the grid. The pole sitter for this one is Piotr Rivera, the Good Speed Racing team, making their second appearance of the year after previously joining us in Portimao. He's joined by the pro driver Dan Arrow. Again, the qualifyings today have been more than a little contrived and tricky, given the conditions we've had all day long. And that does mean we have some rather interesting grids of Finn Wiebelhaus and Manuel Laut from row 2 of the grid. Under normal circumstances and dry conditions, we know that Finn and Manuel would be quicker than Piotr, not by too much, but certainly would normally be a little bit quicker by the way of the form book. But Piotr Rivera seems like a very handy wet driver. The wet conditions, we'll be watching on that one with great interest. Christian Hook as well from row 3 of the grid. He could be one to watch in the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari 296 GT3. Last weekend in Aragon, the number 115 crew actually competed with a Porsche 991.2, the previous generation Porsche GT3 car. The Ferrari was just 2 or 3 days removed from a test for another series, so as a result of that they decided not to drag it out to Aragon, but rather to deploy the older Porsche, and it went well by all indications. Some good podium results in their weekend. A deluxe field of cars though for this weekend in the GT Win Series, over 30 joining us for our biggest grid of the year. Traditionally, Barcelona often is our largest grid of the season. A lot of drivers keen to get their eye in at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, of course. That F1 factor that's often mythologized, it is a real thing. The drivers want to race in F1 at F1 circuits. As we say, pit exit set to open at hour. And we then expect at least 2 laps behind the safety car. Now, whether the race actually starts behind the safety car from pit exit at 12:30, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if we'll actually see them line up for a formalised grid. So we might well get the race started at 12:30 as they exit pit lane. But the information I've been given thus far isn't all the way clear on that. So, regarding the championship situation, the GT Winter Series points table is more complex, to put it gently, than the one we see in FWS. But I can talk about that again in a little while, because for now, we can welcome back, for the first time since Valencia, Michael Kapfinger. He's down with Izzy Browning.
Yes, I'm back, and I've managed to bump into another driver. We've got Michael Kapfinger with us. Michael, I mean, it's looking pretty wet out there. You obviously haven't been out to race yet, so how are we feeling ahead of the race?
Yeah, it's really raining. You need to be very careful with the curbs and everything. And now we're starting from P9, not the place to start, but we wanted to start in the first or second row. The qualifying was not so good for us. We struggled a little bit with the tires because we didn't get them to temperature. And yeah, let's see, maybe we can turn it around in the race and yeah, maybe end the race on the podium.
Well, there's maybe you're not starting on the front row, but there's places to be made up, isn't there?
Yeah, that's for sure. I have some cup cars, I think 2 cup or 1 cup car in front of me. And yeah, in the first 2-3 laps I need to warm up the tires because we don't heat the tires. But then, yeah, let's see what we can achieve, and we just can do our best, and yeah, let's see.
And in terms of this track, is this a track that you're like particularly comfortable at? Obviously, doesn't look particularly comfortable conditions out there, but are you comfortable to drive and ready to go?
Yeah, for sure. The car feels good. Only the tires needs to be in the window we wanted it to be, and yeah, let's keep pushing.
Perfect. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Let's just quickly look at this car because it is a very, very nice livery. If we just quickly have a little look, and then we will head back up to Adam.
Gorgeous livery on the Team U Sportwagen Technic car. That was apparently Michael Kapfinger. I'm surprised he's not already in the car. He likes to be ready to go. I thought there was Johannes, to be honest. I thought it might have been the other twin. But no, that did sound as if he was getting ready to get in the car, didn't it? But not in his full race regalia just yet. And the pit lane does open in 5 minutes. So we do need to get everyone suited, booted and ready to go for sure. And that number 1 car is set to start quite a way down the order, actually, in 9th position. He was talking there about the cup cars. The cup cars will be quite the factor in this race. We've seen it already a few times this year. While the cup cars are, of course, on paper a little bit slower than the GT3s, in these wet conditions, the things that actually make the GT3s quicker the increased aero, well, that's not as much of a factor because it's too wet to go through the corners at full speed. The stiffer chassis, stiffer suspension, neither of which particularly help in the wet conditions. You want a more forgiving car, a slightly softer car. Wider track tyres, definitely not useful in the wet conditions. If anything, the bigger the contact patch, the more chance of aquaplaning. That does mean that Porsche 992 Cup cars in particular are very, very quick in the wet conditions versus GT3s. So you look down the grid, the likes of Leandro Martin starting in 6th place, and you do have to really keep that name in mind and think that is going to be a driver that can challenge P6 on the grid in the Racar Motorsport car. Incidentally, that team, Racar Motorsports, they are important, very important, underlined twice in red, in regards to the overall championship, because they're the only team that can mathematically keep the title race going into our second run of the weekend on Sunday morning. The gap is something in the region of 27 points between Jamo Hartling, Kenneth Heyer in the lead, and Martins and Dieter Sveps in second. 104.29 points in the books for SR Motorsports leading duo, 77.76 for Racar Motorsports, Martins and Sveps. So it works out that just about still in the title hunt is Martins and Sveps. However, they would need to very much, quite significantly outscore Hartling and Heyer to have any hope of keeping the championship going. Per my understanding, as long as Hartling and Heyer put anything like a point on the board, they've won the championship, because there will only be something in the region of 18 points left to score, about 18 to 19 points left to score coming out of the Saturday going into Sunday. So they need to really drop the ball in this first race to have any chance of losing the championship from here. The championship win is very much on the horizon for Hartling and Heyer. Kenneth Heyer, who is a vastly experienced driver, well into his 40s at this point, he'll thank me for saying, but he has in recent years really directed his energies and his focus on developing cars for Mercedes-AMG, be it the GT3 cars, the GT4s, and of course the GT2s, and developing driving talent. And that's exactly what we've seen him do with Jamo Hartling, to the point where Hartling has most of this season been the quicker of the two. And to be honest, Kenneth is not the most self-centered man in the world by any means. I think he kind of holds his hands up and says, yep, Jamo's quicker now, you know, and that's fine by me. That's always been what I've wanted to see from the boy. And yeah, that is great to see. We just had perhaps the most redundant timing message of the day: wet race, just to make sure our GT teams know that. But you know, it's always worth making sure you've actually bolted the wets onto the car. I have seen it happen before where someone has forgotten to do that little micro task. The cars are being wheeled out then onto the apron of the pit lane, and they will be heading out onto the circuit. It does look like they're going to grid in order to do a sighting lap and then start the race under safety car. So there will be a grid to look at for this one. Cars now heading out onto the circuit then. The GT Winter Series grid composed of GT3 cars and single-make machinery from the likes of the Ferrari Challenge, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and of course the Porsche Carrera Cup family of championships. Quite the unique melting pot of machinery on this grid. We're also joined by a GT2 car for the first and what will be only time this season. The Rezoon Racing Squad have brought out their GT2 car. That is the KTM Crossbow GT2. That car is a lot faster in the straights than a GT3. However, it does lose out in the corners under normal circumstances. However, in this wet weather, that might not be as big of a factor. What will be a big factor, though, for starting driver Thomas Anderson is the fact that he starts all the way down outside the top 20. So the KTM's potential effect on the race is limited. A few drivers that are further down the order than I would have envisioned. One of them is Almery Bonduelle, who will start from 17th on the grid. Bonduelle in the BDR competition car, a second car entered by BDR competition by Grupa Prom, joining the pre-existing driver who we've seen last time out, Alfredo Hernandez. We saw him previously at Jerez, of course. Also at Portimao. Thumbs up being given there from back of shot. There is the KTM Crossbow GT2 car then, the very unique canopied car. The driver, if they want to get out, effectively has to push the roof and the windscreen up. Kind of clamshell cover, as opposed to a traditional roof, or indeed a traditional door. Truly spectacular machine, as are those wonderful Mercedes-AMG GT3s that just rolled past shot as well. A few drivers taking a couple of sighting laps there. One driver that we should watch for from the very back of the grid, 30th on the grid, Milos Pavlovic. That's one of the two pro drivers that I said I was surprised to see on the amended Race 1 starter list. Now, my theory, how much water it holds, I'm not too sure of. My theory is that a few of the amateur drivers have backed out. A few of the less experienced drivers have backed out of this, pointed at their driver coach and said, you know what, I think I'm feeling generous, they can do Race 1. I think that's been the case for a few. You see there that we do have an additional Ferrari 296 GT3 out there. That is the Rosso Corsa machine that's just heading out onto the circuit there. That's a 74 car of Stefano Marazzi. Great to have Rosso Corsa Racing joining us. And Rosso Corsa with their first appearance in GT Winter Series. And great to see the 296 being more widely adopted. We're talking about this actually in the media center a couple of days ago. We may well have seen the last appearance of a Ferrari 488 GT3 car in the GT Winter Series. I don't know how many GT3 cars we're going to get, or 488 GT3s we're going to get next year, if any. Of course, it has now been superseded going into its second year. The Orica-built Ferrari 296 has taken that spot in the marketplace. However, that all remains to be seen. I know that De Beermacher Racing have bought a 296 GT3 car to replace the 488 we've seen over the course of this year's GT Winter Series. So we'll see what happens on that front. While the cars are still heading towards the grid, though, I'm delighted to say that Andy McEwen has, by car or by foot, by hook or by crook, come over to join me in the commentary box. How are you, sir?
You, Adam. Yeah, fantastic to be up here. Thought I'd take a break from sitting in the warm, watching everyone else get wet over by the podium, to come and sit in the warm, watching everyone get wet over here in the commentary box instead. But cracking view it is up here, and really, really looking forward to this race. It's so nice to see such a big grid of cars. Conditions will be a challenge, no doubt about it, but you know, we've got a much better chance of a grid of GT cars being able to handle these conditions than a grid of single-seaters or prototypes. So I'm hoping that if the weather does, as we've been told it will, and improves within the next half hour or so, by the time this race is done, track conditions might be a tad more favourable.
I do hope it does improve over the next half hour, because I'm looking at the moment out to Parc Fermé, and I must say that is the heaviest rain I've seen hitting that strip of tarmac all day long. So we can see there the 4 minutes, or the 4 lights on the light board there at the start gantry. That implies, I always say implies on this stuff because things are often liable to change, that we should be underway in the next few minutes. And as I was alluding to just before you came up, we've got an interesting grid for this one. Piotr Viera starting from pole position. Now, Piotr is firmly and self-admittedly the am of that lineup alongside Dan Arrow. He'll be starting there from pole position, though, and he's going to have his work cut out for him. I mean, Jamo Hartling is there in second place. Finn Wiebelhaus is there in third. And while Jörg Dreishoff was meant to be starting this race, he's subsequently handed it over to Manuel Lauck and said, I'm not going out in that condition. So that means we've got three hard chargers. I don't know if I can call Manuel young, right there behind Piotr Vera.
Yeah, muddled up grid, which is a dream for us because it means we're guaranteed a little bit of action. The trouble is, with some quick drivers further down the grid than you would normally see them, these are not the conditions to be stuck mid-pack, are they? Because it's difficult to overtake, it's difficult to see with the amount of spray that they're going to be facing. So it won't be as simple, not that it's ever simple, but it won't be as simple as it normally would be for some of those quick drivers to move through the field. So it's going to be a fascinating race. I believe we can head down into the hustle and bustle down in the pit lane. Issy, hopefully, able to chat to a few of our drivers.
Hello everyone. Boys, I'm a little bit jealous of both of you up in the commentary box right now because it has just absolutely started pelting it down. Anyway, GT Winter Series first race of the day, and I am getting a raindrop straight in my eye. One person I am going to come and talk to is Kenneth Heyer, because they might be about to win the championship. First of all, if we just pan down, he's got some makeshift rain boots on, so that's a pretty good going. I need some of those. Kenneth, I mean, this is going to be a very, very wet race, but you have the potential to take the championship in this, so how are we feeling ahead of this race?
Yeah, I hope we can start. It's heavy raining, we have some water on turn 10. Yeah, for sure we want to drive it and not win it on the board or something. Yeah, we are well prepared. It's quite a lot of water, but it's different to the Formula cars, for example. We don't swim so often. We are also with closed buttons, all the cars, a lot of aero, but I think it should be possible, but let's see if he starts or not.
And obviously different conditions in practice to today, completely different. So how have you felt in the car so far?
Yeah, with the light rain was pretty good. We can manage every time to be in 1, 2, 3 position, for example. But in heavy rain we struggle a bit. But as you said, it changed so fast the whole day. We will see. I hope he stays out of trouble and better third than getting the points and today celebrating instead of having an incident or something. Yeah, it's quite tough, I hope. All
right, thank you very much for speaking to us. We wish you best of luck for this race. Kenneth Heyer there, who Jamo Hartling is in this car behind me. I don't think that anybody is going to want to speak to me, and I don't really blame them. I'm going to see if I can get myself some of those rain boots, but we have just had the 1 minute board. So we're going to go back up to you two in the dry for this race.
Thank you very much, Izzy. Yes, I think the only place dry within about half-mile radius is probably us right now up here in the commentary box. I'm not bragging, I'm just reporting the fact. We have grid data ready to go, so let's run through the grid for this race. As we've alluded to, a little bit topsy-turvy. Piotr Vera starting from pole position for this one. He'll be getting the fists up and trying to fight against Jamo Hartling. He is perhaps on his way to a championship for he and Kenneth Heyer. Finn Wiebelhaus, he's won 5 races from 6 appearances in the GT Winter Series. Can he make it a 6th win of the year from row 2? He's alongside Manuel Lauck, Christian Hook and Leandro Martins, the first of the Cup 2 runners, making up row number 3. Row 4 of the grid, Martin Kazmarski in the 147 car. He's had some good appearances so far in the season in these kind of conditions. Hubert Darmetko starts from 8th place. Mikael Kapfinger and Luca Arnold round out the top 10. Noah Stromstead, the junior single-seater star, making his first appearance in GT Winter Series alongside Father Morton this weekend. Stefano Marazzi starting on the 6th row. We'll dash through the rest of the grid as the race begins under safety car conditions. At least 2 laps expected under SC. Sebastian Daum is next alongside Kwanda Mokoena on row 7. Row 8 is the first of the Lamborghini Trofeo cars. Adrian Lewandowski alongside Joachim Bulting. Almari Bonduel, one to watch. He starts from row 9 of the grid alongside Frank Kivitz. Row 10 of the grid will be Igor Klaya alongside Alfredo Hernandez. Row 11, Marcel Van Berlo and Caleb Bergman. Ibrahim Badawi and Thomas Anderson on row 12. Row 13, Arturo Melgar in 25th place alongside Jan Giotza. John Dillon, he's back after missing Motorland Aragon. He starts from 27th alongside Maurizio Cerasoli. Talal Shahir starts from 29th place and Milos Pavlovic starting from P30. I expect him to have a bit of an upward trajectory. Raid Saheli rounding out the 31 car order for this one. It was going to be 32. Sadly, we lost Helen Racing's Ferrari 488 GT3 car and Thor Haugen to a crash into the barriers coming out of turn 8 yesterday. Funny enough, he came up to me about 10 minutes before and said, make sure it doesn't rain. It then started to spit. He touched a wet curb. Unfortunately, my meteorology only goes so far. Hopefully Thor's all right, and they'll be back out for some pre-season testing here in Barcelona in a few days' time. But Piotr Rivera then starting from the front. The Mercedes-AMG GT3 is the weapon of choice in a lot of the GT3 racing categories around the world. And we're seeing again that the car has a stranglehold on GT Wind Series as well. 3 of them there in the top 3. But those Porsches, that nice weight on the rear axle of a Porsche often comes up trumps in conditions just like these.
Well, actually, you read my mind. That was the very point I was about to make, because we do have front-engine cars, mid-engine cars, and rear-engine cars on this grid, and they all handle very differently, even in the dry conditions. In the wet, though, it seems that you really want all of the weight over one of the axles, either the very front or the very back of the car. The mid-engine cars often struggle in these kind of conditions because the steering goes light, you don't have much traction coming out of the corner. By having the engine right over the front axle, that plants the front tyres into the ground, generates front-end grip, helps the car to rotate in difficult conditions. While having it over the rear, as you do in the Porsche, steering can be a bit light, but your traction off the turn is second to none. So going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Obviously, the cars have been out on track today in wet conditions, but this is now biblically wet conditions, and I think it may take more than 1 or 2 laps behind the safety car for them to really get to grips with just how little grip there is.
Yes, in an ideal world, it will be that minimum of 2 laps, but yeah, I share your pessimism. We do have one bulletin on the screen already, and that's car 147, Martin Kazmarski, lights on. Now, I've noticed this before, that Martin has a proclivity for just driving around in the dusk with the lights not on. I know the car is new to him. Hopefully he knows where the switch is and can get those lights on. Kazmarski, one of the most interesting backstories, CVs in the grid. Raced 2014 in the Dakar Rally, youngest ever driver to compete in a car in the Dakar back in 2014, took 9th overall, dabbled in rallycross, and then since then has been racing with PTT, his team for this weekend in Porsche Cup cars. Decided to go GT3 racing for the first time earlier in the year, made his first appearance in the Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo with us in Jerez. A very diverse background. We've already seen him win races, and given that CV, one would suggest there's a little built-in car control there as well.
You would imagine so, and I think that may come in handy over the next 25 minutes or so. I mean, we're seeing... speaking of, someone has now lost...
That's Martin.
That is unbelievable, Adam. What have you done? Car control skills will only take you so far, because the point I was about to make is it really does look a bit sketchy out there, doesn't it? There is so much standing water, even on the racing line. The rain is coming down more quickly than the very efficient tyres on these GT racing cars can clear it off the circuit, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter who you are or how experienced you are, it can catch you out.
When I first met Martin Kazmarski in Jerez, he tested me on my Martin Kazmarski knowledge and was so happy that I knew all the relevant stats that he gave me a hug. I dare suggest if I see him in catering this evening, I might not get a hug. I know he watches these back. Red flag, unfortunately, has once again come up on the board. Understandably, I mean, I said it a few minutes ago, the level of rainfall visible on Parc Fermé, on the tarmac in general, is looking worse than I've seen it all day. So I'm not exactly surprised that the red flag has been called. As you said, the aquaplaning is a very real thing. A lot of these cars, even the Cup cars, still have a very wide track to them. There's a lot of contact patch to contend with, and in the wet conditions, that means that it's very liable to end up aquaplaning off into the gravel.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we jest, but if Martin Kazmarski can be caught out by these conditions, then really anyone can, you know. And he was quite a long way out of turn 4 by the looks of it when he lost control. So that really does look as if he's just aquaplaned straight off the circuit and into the gravel trap. So I think it is a little bit too wet out there, really. The fact that they're losing control at these speeds means that unleashing them fully is perhaps not the best of ideas. But back into the pit lane they will head, and hopefully, we say with everything crossed, we might be able to get the race back underway in the relatively near future. It is 3:45 local time here, so we've got a couple of hours to play with, Adam. We can afford, if we need to just try and sit this out, but you're right, I had a little glimpse at my weather forecasting a moment ago, and if anything, the rain now set to be heavier at 4 o'clock than it has been all day long.
Yeah.
So things changing, but not necessarily for the better.
No, it's very unfortunate, but we can only do so much about it. As you said, 4 o'clock was touted all week, frankly, as the glimmer of hope point of the day, and sadly that glimmer of hope has been thrown into the annals of history. We now have a very pessimistic forecast going forward for the rest of the day. The spectacular GT Win Series grid then is pulled up, unfortunately, in the fast lane of the pits, not where we want them to be, but right now sort of where they have to be. You get a good shot there, though, of some of the various different specifications of car we have out there on the circuit. The Cup 1s, the Cup 2s, and indeed the Cup 3s and 4s. We do have a Cup 3 car out there on circuit, of course. That being the Sunder Motorworks car, an older specification of Porsche, the 991.2 Cup car. So that means we have 5 classes on the grid, which, of course, when you go back and do your podium ceremonies, that means there's a lot to do at the end of a GT Winter Series race as well.
It's not a very big room behind the podium either. We struggled earlier on with the GT4 race to fit. I think it was 4 class worth of driver in there, and they're all sort of fighting their way out between each other. So, yeah, it's going to get busy down there, if indeed we get to that point. I hope we do. Yes, it's certainly going to be busy when we get down there. But it's nice as well, especially with a big grid of cars like this, Adam. It is important to give all drivers of all experience levels some motivation, something to fight for out there. There is a class kind of for everyone, whoever you may be, whatever car you are in, and it means that often the battles that we really need to focus on are those going on further down the order, and going to be fascinating as and when we do get racing started to see how perhaps some of the less experienced drivers get on, perhaps new to racing this class of car. What a baptism of fire this will be, because as we've touched upon, they're not the easiest of conditions, especially if you're not that au fait with the car.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to answer a question that I suppose some may have as to why the 992 Cup cars have their own class, the Ferrari Challenge cars have their own Cup class. There are quite a few series. I look at the likes of Belcar, for example, where they do kind of BOP them together into something of a GTC class. The reason that's not done here is several-fold, but one of the primary reasons is that part of the purpose is to get people ready, in some cases, for their summer campaigns. Therefore, it makes the most sense to be able to drive the car kind of in the spec you're going to be driving it in throughout the summer. Hopefully, they won't have to drive them in conditions like these during the summer. We can't even do it in the winter at the moment, unfortunately.
No, indeed not, but pristinely prepared cars down there in the pit lane, as we're seeing. That was the pole-sitting Goodspeed Racing team Mercedes, and they're really going to all lengths to protect Jamo Hartling's Mercedes from the elements. There is Jamo Hartling's view, and I use the word view in inverted commas. Do you know what, though? Actually, Adam, I don't think that's a terrible idea, because for a racing driver, there's a lot going through your mind at this point. You know, you're in the car, you've got yourself all hyped up, ready to go. You're sort of jumping at the opportunity to go racing. Then we stop the race, we put you in the pit lane, and you're just sort of sat there to think, and sometimes shutting off the outside world. Not necessarily the worst of ideas, but Jamo Hartling also trying to prevent any moisture getting into the car as well, because the last thing you want is misty windows.
This is a car I want to touch on very quickly, the 911 machine of Leandro Martins. You might notice that it looks alarmingly like the Villico car that we saw last weekend at Motorland Aragon. That's principally because it is the Villico car we saw last weekend at Motorland Aragon. A third Porsche 992 GT3 Cup chassis of the season for Leandro Martins. If you were watching with us in Estoril the season opening weekend, he got tagged by Adrian Lewandowski as the race got underway. Huge impact with the barriers. He was A-OK, the car was not. So they bought a second machine off of last year's champion Johannes Kapfinger, who's here this weekend in the use entry in GT3. They bought his championship-winning car from last year's GT Winter Series, and it was going really, really well until race 1 at Aragon, where the suspension was prohibitively damaged, and rather than repairing that car, they've got themselves another one. So chassis 3 for race number 6 of the season. It's been a very difficult year for Leandro Martins and Racar Motorsport. But in spite of that, when their results have been able to stack up, they have been stacking up nicely. Leandro, along with driver coach Dieter Sveps, currently sits second in the championship. Currently the only team mathematically that can get up there and challenge Haier and Hartling, but it will take effectively a non-scoring weekend for Haier and Hartling for them to lose the championship from this point. This then is the #1 car shared by Johannes and Mikael Katfinger. Mikael at the wheel for this one, and great to see Sportwagen Technik back with us, a very consistent supporter of the series over the years, and the Katfinger twins I think are going to be ones to watch. We know here in the GT Winter Series quite what they're capable of. They're going into the ADAC GT Masters for a full campaign with Sportwagen Technik next year. That series, incidentally, very resurgent going into the summer. I think the international GT racing scene might have to keep an eye on those two, to be honest with you.
I think you're probably right, yes. They've certainly caught our attention, haven't they, of late, and they are getting to grips with the car. They're getting useful mileage in, as you said, pre-season, and that really is invaluable. Not at the moment, they're not, but hopefully as the rest of the day goes on. The 111 car then is next. That's Luca Arnold in the Schnitzlam Racing Mercedes, and that is another car, arguably you would expect to pick up a few positions perhaps as and when we get the race underway. And then one of the Porsche Cup cars in line behind, that is Martin Stromsted, the Sunder Motorworks car, with the Norwegian flag livery adorning that one. The cars are all getting a good clean now, aren't they, as they're sat there in the pit lane. They will never have looked better. Hopefully, when the race gets underway, they can get to the checkered flag still looking just as pristine, Adam.
Yeah, they've re-liveried this car as well since we last saw it in Portimao, assuming it is the same chassis. It was Morten Stromsted driving alone at the Portimao round, has now been joined by son Noah, and Noah of course comes with a great level of experience in junior single-seaters. He's been out in the Middle East over the course of the last few months, driving cars there, as we see the 147 of Martin Kazmarski rather sheepishly, got there eventually, heading back into the pit lane. But just to circle back around quickly to that Cup 3 entry, Noah Stromsted will be an interesting one to watch because he's 16 years of age. Did Frecker guest appearances last year, the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, and is doing that full-time this year. But he's often shared his racing with his dad. Back when they were doing Danish F4, they were both on the grid, father and son in a Formula 4 grid, which I have to assume is, if not a one-off, a very rare occurrence. And they're still sharing their racing now, and Noah is getting the opportunity to race with his dad once again, which I know he greatly enjoys. And yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? We get a few father-son driver coaching situations. We also had that with Glenn Van Berlo, who sometimes coaches his father Marcel. Sometimes as a father you have to accept that your son is a better racing driver.
Yes, not always an easy realisation to come to, I can imagine, but you know, GT racing is the place to do that, isn't it? If you want to race with a family member in particular, it is a great place to do that. We see multiple fathers bringing their sons through into GT racing, and very often the son immediately jumps in as a silver grade driver or a gold grade driver, the father perhaps the gentleman by that point. But it's an interesting team dynamic because, I mean, you're always going to be frustrated if your teammate bins it or doesn't really perform to the very best of their capabilities, but usually you don't have to then share the drive home with them discussing exactly how they fell short of your expectations. That's
true. The pushback could be harsh. This is another father-son entered car, incidentally, the GT3 Poland Lamborghini, Andrzej and Adrian Lewandowski. Andrzej has been racing for north of a decade now, has previously won the An-Class Championship in GT Open et al, and is these days focused on Super Trofeo racing primarily. Adrian a little bit less experienced, so I think it is still dad giving the advice to an extent. How much is listened to, of course, is an entirely different question. There is Joachim Bulting's car, the number 38 machine. Joachim, who I'm always fascinated by. Has he got? Oh, that's different. No, he's got a cooling device in the car. In fact, I think he might be trying to get rid of some of the condensation in the cockpit of that. But I look back at Joachim's record coming into our first round in Estoril and said, I can't find anything that you did before the 2015 Brit Car 24-hour. What else did you do before? And he went, well, that's because that was my first race. He drove a 7-litre Chevy-powered Marcos Mantis in his first ever race, and it was the Brit Car 24 hours.
After that, I think any other car that he steps into is going to seem like a very, very easy proposition compared to a Marcos. And I'd imagine he probably had a little bit of inclement weather to deal with that weekend as well, being Silverstone. It is often grey and equally as often fairly damp as well around there. So, yeah, what a car to make your racing debut in there. Most people these days go for something small, low-powered front-wheel drive, and that is quite frankly the exact opposite. But, you know, there is something to be said, I think, though, for challenging yourself, particularly at an early stage of your racing career, rather than taking things easy, because you will learn an awful lot in a situation like that that you can then take forward into your racing career. Now, Adam, we're starting to get a bit of news, I believe, on a possible restart to the race.
Yeah, it looks as though we're going to have a restart in 5 minutes behind the safety car. Now, what time did they put that bulletin out? They put that bulletin out this minute. So, yes, in about 4 and a bit minutes' time, we should get the race restarted behind safety car. Now, it's not raining as heavily. It has not ceased raining at any point since the red flag has flown. So that is, we'll follow that. So we'll see how we go once we are rolling. Hopefully we get some green flag running in. Now we do need to cover this. The 88 car of Frank Kivitz. Last time he was joined by driver coach Kevin Morocco, a former FIA Formula 2 racer back in the days when Jonathan Palmer ran the championship. This weekend, he's got someone who, around the same time, was racing in Formula 1 in the form of Timo Glock. Timo Glock is racing that Ferrari 488 Challenge car, I believe only in the endurance race, as is part of the course for the driver coaches. But Timo joining us, not the first XF1 driver we've had in GT Winter Series, but certainly quite the interesting name to have along.
I wonder how many times this weekend he's been asked about a certain race in Brazil that he played a fairly significant part in a number of years ago. We won't go there, but
I will.
remembered for much more than that in his Formula 1 racing career, I should stress. But yeah, certainly cemented his place in the history books, whether inadvertently or not. But yeah, going to be interesting to see how he gets on out there. This is a time where a driver coach, certainly someone of Timo's experience, is invaluable, especially if the other driver is particularly inexperienced. There's a lot more, I think, that goes into driver coaching than simply teaching them where to brake, what line to take. It's the mindset of a racing driver as well. And, you know, some of these drivers, again, the longer they sit here, the more keen they are to just get on with it and go racing. And the temptation is there when the race does resume to really go hell for leather and take big risks to try and get to the front, but that's not usually the best approach to have, particularly in conditions such as these. So I would imagine Timo's on the radio, he's been in there chatting and sort of making sure that the driver, as all the driver coaches will be, that their drivers are in the correct mindset to resume racing. It is a patience game, this, particularly when it's so easy, as we've already seen, to drop the car off the circuit.
Yes, exactly right. And of course, there's such a huge skill set to be learned there in terms as well of anticipating what the conditions are going to be lap on lap. And it's those most gifted drivers of all that can work out what the weather is doing around them and what conditions they may face going into a deep braking zone lap on lap. We have some really talented drivers on this grid. Incidentally, I will just say, I believe the first XF1 driver we ever had here in GT Win Series was Marcus Winkelhock. Now there's a driver that would have done good in these conditions, yes, based on his one appearance in F1. Timo, I'll give you the good bit of Timo's CV as well. 3 podiums in Formula 1 for Toyota across 2008 and 2009, and that's the bit we should remember him for. There is the number 62 car, the Egyptian racer Ibrahim Badawi, at the wheel of this one, the DL Racing Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo 2. Now, he turned 18 since we last saw him. And he's also got his driving license since we last saw him. He was not a road driver until very, very recently indeed, despite blasting a Lamborghini around the circuits of Europe for the last 18 months or so of his existence. Absolutely wonderful kid, and has been very, very quick and very, very brave at Jerez with us earlier in the season. There's the KTM GT2 car, and I will take the moment to say, GT2 cars, to me, the most impressive looking GT cars of all, because even though they have less aero and not quite as wide of a track, huge wings, they just look so aggressive.
Very futuristic, aren't they? And that, for me, is what a GT racing car should be. It should be the kind of car that, you know, kids are putting posters up on their wall of, and you can imagine certainly that car is adorning a few teenagers' bedroom walls as we speak. But very difficult cars to drive, those, actually. They're designed to be quite challenging to drive, which is interesting because it sort of markets itself more towards the gentleman driver. But I guess it's, again, that steep learning curve can do them some good, and they're certainly a kind of car that you need to treat with a little bit of respect.
See also LMP3, I
Yes.
would suggest as well. Quite a few people say, right, I want to be a racer at the Le Mans 24 Hours. Obviously, these small prototypes are the first step, and then, well, then they find out. The safety car is rolling, as is the field then. So the race goes back into action. We are once again seeing the clock tick down, and well, again, we suspect we're probably going to have 1 or 2 laps under safety car before we actually go back to green flag conditions. But let's take the opportunity to reiterate the order they come out onto the grid in. It is Piotr Vera who lines up, or will be leading the train of cars behind the safety car in the Goodspeed Racing Team Mercedes. Similar Mercedes from SR Motorsport and Haupt Racing Team follow that. JMO Hartling, Finn Wiebelhaus. Manuel Lauk sits in 4th position ahead of Christian Hook in the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari 296. Lakar Motorsports' Leandro Martins in 6th position, the first of the Porsche Cup machinery. Martin Kazmarski, Hubert Darmetko, Mikael Kapfinger and Luca Arnold round out your top 10 as they roll behind the safety car. Again, it does look as though the rain has let up a little bit. We'll be hoping that this one gets underway in the not-too-distant future. Of course, we will have to keep an eye on Martin Kazmarski because he had his dramas earlier on. In fact, I can see that Kazmarski is in the pit lane still, according to the timing screen, as is Christian Hook. So I think one may have learned his lesson and the other has decided he doesn't want to find out.
Yes, I think I spotted Christian diving into a garage, actually, as soon as the cars came into the pit lane. So I don't know whether he was fighting some sort of technical issue before that, or he's just decided, quite frankly, not worth the risk, which I really wouldn't blame him. But I will say, tentatively, that from what I'm seeing so far on this outlap, the conditions are not as bad as they were. There is visibly less standing water. It's clearly still very wet, but there is visibly less standing water, certainly on the racing line. The odd sort of river or stream of water coming across the track, but nothing that a couple of laps behind the safety car won't teach the drivers and allow them to learn which bits of the circuit to avoid. I think we might just be good to go racing here before too much longer.
I will not add to that because I always seem to jinx it. So yes, as you said. Piotr Oliveira then at the sharp end of the order. Goodspeed Racing Team back with us for the first time since Portimao in what I can tell you is a photographer's best friend, that car. I have heard many a positive noise from the photography end of our paddock about that number 14 car. The latest bulletins come up on our screen suggest that drivers should follow the safety car until the safety car lights are off, which, yes, they definitely should. But that is basically saying don't anticipate this race to resume. We'll tell you when it's going to happen. That is the plan there. Of course, we did see in the previous race in the GT4, Zach Meakin stack them up after 2 laps behind the safety car, anticipating a restart that then never came. And of course, that's a situation that race control goes, no, 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 because someone in 10th place might be thinking, well, the safety car's clearly gone. And that's when dramas occur.
especially when visibility is at a premium, which it quite clearly is today. So, yeah, we don't want to be bunching the field up until we are ready to go. But like I said, I'm hoping it will only be a couple of minutes. We've got 21.5 minutes plus that extra lap still to go. So there is time here to get a decent little race in, and just about enough time, I think, for those drivers further down the order to think about moving forward. This is the shot I really wanted to see, because this is where we saw Martin Kasmarski going off. Or we didn't see it, but this is where he went off earlier on. Again, doesn't look all that bad. Quite a bit of gravel on the road from when Martin came back out onto the circuit, but it certainly doesn't look as challenging. Steep downhill part of the circuit. That is always a river that runs across the road from drivers left to right. That seems to be clearing quite nicely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was that that little river that forms at that section of the circuit that caught out Kasmarski, and everyone from fifth back has gained places, as both Kasmarski and Hook decide discretion is the best part of valor for this one. Kwanda Mokoena is one that I'm keen to watch. He just goes through shot there at turn 9. He is starting a little way further back than he would have liked, than he would have anticipated. Of course, one of 2 drivers on the grid, mentored by Manuel Reuter, the other being Finn Wiebelhaus at the Haupt Racing team. Safety car lights are still on, so I suspect we'll get at least one more lap out of this. That safety car, incidentally, might be the quickest car out there in these conditions, being a GTR with 4-wheel drive on it. There's a famous, I'm tempted to call it a racing Aesop's fable, in that I don't know that it actually happened. But Jamie Campbell-Walter allegedly told Jeremy Clarkson that they had to tell an Audi S4 driver to slow down during an FIA GT race because the Listers and the Vipers couldn't actually keep up under safety car conditions.
I'm prepared to believe that, actually, really, because for all of the performance you do get out of a GT racing car, they are limited, rather, in these conditions. The tyres they run are very, very good, but they can only clear so much water, and they've just got so much raw, unrestricted power, and that really is the key thing, getting that power down through and out of the corners when it's really, really wet, properly wet. That can be something of a challenge, but they're going at a reasonable pace, in fairness, the cars, and that's important. You know, it's one thing to just follow the safety car around for a few laps, long laps, wait until the conditions improve, but the quicker they go, the more water they will clear, and also the more they can really start to test out those conditions. We're not at full racing speed right now, but certainly some of those cars further back in the order are getting close to it and getting a really good idea, actually, of what things will be like, hopefully, in the next few laps.
Yes, absolutely. It's I think it's interesting. A few of the parties at the back probably aren't going much quicker than they will go under racing conditions. The safety car queue is a little bit spread out. There is the 992. We see a couple of 992 GT3s going through shot. Manuel Lauk being one of them for Proton Huber competition. That's the very impressive dark blue and orange car, the crunchy wrapper car, if you're English. And also, of course, the cap finger machine that we saw in Valencia. We had a brilliant GT3 entry list, much as we do this weekend at the Circuit Ricardo Tormo, including Nicky Thiem in the SSR Performance Lamborghini. And Mikael and Johannes Kapfinger, Finn Wiebelhaus, Kwanda Mokoena all gave Nicky Thiem something to be worried about. In fact, in Finn Wiebelhaus's case, he beat him twice, which really goes to show the quality of the sharp end in this GT3 class. Finn Wiebelhaus, 17 years old, ADAC backed. There's a lot of stock behind him. He was recently picked, this week in fact, picked to represent Germany in the GT Sprint element of the FIA Motorsport Games. There are a lot of young chargers here that a lot of people have their eye on.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's another valuable element of these winter series. You know, it may not be the sort of proper championship that a lot of drivers are focusing on in 2024, but there are always people watching, and you know, the profile of winter series such as these growing all the time. That means more eyes on them, bigger teams start to get involved directly in the racing as well, and any time you're out there as a young up-and-coming racing driver, anytime you're on circuit, even on a test day, somebody will be watching your lap times. They'll be chatting to, you know, be talking to their sources in the paddock, and you know, it is on days like this even where you could just catch the right person's eye at the right time and really, really push your racing career forward. Now, I think, Adam, perhaps more than standing water, this is now becoming the problem, really. It's the spray. There is still clearly quite a lot of water on the track, and if you are anything further back than about 5th or 6th in the queue, your visibility is limited or perhaps zero at some of the faster parts of the circuit. That is a worry.
Yes, our Alpha Live cameraman down there at turn 1 made quite a good editorial point with the lens there, didn't he? Just zoning in on the ball of spray in the midfield. That is indeed more than likely the primary obstacle here, because yes, we talk about the cars circulating, therefore clearing the track of some of its standing water, but of course, where does it go? It goes up into the air and causes all manner of visibility issues. So that is the other consideration. Still no bulletin as to the safety car coming in, but we have our fingers firmly crossed at the moment.
We have at least run a few laps as well, Adam, which,
yes,
unlike in the Formula Winter Series race earlier on, we weren't able to do, so no points can be allocated, whereas here we've run a handful of laps as the red flag now comes out. I wonder if perhaps that was sort of the thinking. It means that this does at least officially account as a race, a points-scoring race towards the championship, whereas if they just sort of canned it after that first lap or two behind the safety car, that wouldn't have been the case. So probably quite a sensible call there from race control. It's obviously a shame. We want to see racing. The drivers want to go racing, but I suspect that was at least partly behind the decision to do what we've just seen. The rain, I think, maybe is getting a tad heavier as well, so few contributing factors. It's also getting quite dark out there now. That camera perhaps darkening things slightly down at the hairpin at turn 9, but it is certainly not getting any better out there, and we can at least now count this as a legitimate point-scoring race.
Yes, exactly. The cars are to follow the safety car to the fast lane for the time being, which again suggests to me that perhaps they're not done trying to make this work just yet, which I'm a little bit surprised by, but then also I'm not, because of course the GT Win Series in particular is arguably, along with the prototypes, our most amateur driver facing series. The GT4 has a lot of young silver drivers. The formulas, of course, are the junior single-seater competitors. But the GT Win Series, more often than not, the pocket that funds all this is in the car, and they want all the track time they can get. Of course, some others decide, actually, I don't want this particular track time, which is why Christian Hook is currently making himself a coffee. But that is a factor to consider as well. We do want to try and get as much racing, as much, or give it as much of an opportunity as we can to actually get some green flag running in this race.
And simply running around behind the safety car is wasting time. You know, that time was ticking away all the way. Okay, we could run for another 5 or 6 minutes and then decide the track's good to go, but you'll only have 6 or 7 minutes of the race left, and there's no guarantee we'll get to that point. So race control, these are the things that race control are constantly monitoring. They're not just looking for the standing water to improve or the spray to improve. They're trying to balance the need for safety with the need for, you know, giving the drivers what ultimately they paid for, which is the opportunity to go and race. So, you know, I would quite happily sit here for another half hour waiting for the track conditions to improve if it means we at least get a bit of a race in rather than trundle around behind the safety car for half an hour.
The good news is that, incidentally, if that is what we end up doing, you're not needed across the road just yet. If things end now, there won't be a podium ceremony, just so you know.
I can stay in the warm then, is that what you're saying?
For a little bit, yeah.
Excellent news.
Carte blanche at the moment to remain roofed. There is the KTM pulling up once again then in the hands of Thomas Anderson. Of course, Resume More Than Racing, that's a team that we've seen a lot of in the GT Win Series and now the GT4 Win Series over the years. That's a team incidentally running the 77 car that, of course, we saw in the wall, unfortunately, in the GT4 race earlier on. John Dillon's car there as well in the tricolor, the most Italian, aggressively Italian of the Ferraris out there. Of course, John Dillon, I mean, this is a man that you probably have some experience of as well. Great guy to talk to, and a great teammate as well there in Matt Griffin.
And those two go a long way back as well, don't they? They've worked together for at least a decade, possibly longer. So, yeah, they certainly know each other well, don't they? That kind of car, that kind of livery, as pretty as it is, a commentator's nightmare, and indeed a spectator's nightmare, because depending on which side of the track you're stood on, it will look like a very different car. It's red on one side, green on the other, but yeah, certainly a striking livery on that Ferrari. But John, hugely experienced driver in all conditions. In fact, pretty handy in the wet, I seem to recall from some of the racing I've seen him do back in the UK. And he would certainly have been chomping at the bit, ready and raring to go. You can hear the rain pelting down from our pit lane camera. Which is capturing these stunning up-close shots of the cars. Something actually, Adam, as commentators, we don't always get the chance to do is get down up close and personal with these things. And I really do urge anybody who comes to a racetrack, if you do have the opportunity to wander around the paddock, get up close to the cars, do so, because they're stunning bits of kit, much bigger than you ever realise when you look at them on TV, and much more intricate as well. You know, if you really start looking at some of the front bodywork, some of the little bits of aero, the grille there you can see down the side, that's all designed in a very specific way to channel the air onto that rear wing, and it is fascinating when you get the chance to really inspect a car like this. I mean, it's a feast for the eyes anyway. They look amazing, but it is a rolling science project, really. Every single detail matters.
There's Alessio Ruffini's car. He's telling me he is wrapping it eventually. The bare carbon fibre has been something I've been lobbying for to remain during, I believe, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo season that he'll be competing in, but sadly that will soon be consigned to the annals of history. Actually, funny enough, speaking of seeing the cars up close and personal, I bumped into a Fassetti Motorsport guest group earlier on who were just kind of kicking around looking for something to do. I ended up taking them on a bit of an impromptu garage tour, including the garage that Autosport Racing Lamborghini is in. And to your point, the effect and the presence of the cars for those members of public or those guests of Fassetti Motorsport really did quite clearly have a big impact on everybody. Very, very special cars, GT3 machines, Super Trofeo machines. They're always the ones that turn the most heads. Obviously, the prototypes are the ones that shout the loudest, particularly here at Barcelona with this grandstand that we are sat in at the moment, the big main grandstand. It does effectively create almost like a theatre experience, acoustics and opera would only dream of, as the cars bounce off every single surface around the area. But the GT3s, I think, obviously, among other things, the origin of GT Winter Series, this is the main category, the main event in the eyes of many is the GT Winter Series. This is the origin for Giedelic Racing's very existence. Giedelic was previously focused entirely on track days, their endless summer events, then decided to create a product to allow people to go racing in the winter months, which began at the end of 2019 going into 2020. This is the 5th season of the GT Winter Series. This is ground zero. This is where it all began.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at it now. Look how it's grown, even just during the last month or so as well, really. Yeah. More and more cars joining the grid. So inevitably, start of the season, you know, a few drivers perhaps haven't finalised deals or their cars aren't quite ready. But back end of the season, it has been wonderfully well supported and a really efficient team as well. It's my first time meeting the Giedelic Racing team, and they are very, very efficient. They're very, very friendly people as well, and that's always important because they make them easier to work with, but also that does entice drivers to come and be a part of their show. So we hope we can bring you some more of their show in the near future. But yeah, certainly been very impressed with what I've seen so far.
Yes, speaking of the small team, they also have been working very hard to kind of bring in incremental improvements to the package as the package grows. I will tell you about what I was going to tell you in a minute, because we have a more interesting person to hear from than me. We have two, in fact, because Izzy Browning is with Noah Stromstead. So let's go to them.
Oh, aren't you sweet, Adam? Yeah, I've come down and I managed to find Noah Stromstead, who's willing to speak to us. Noah, usually a single-seater driver, now you're in a GT car, so how are you finding it so far?
It's very different, but it's fun. It's a nice experience.
And you are racing with your dad as well this weekend, so that's got to be pretty special.
Yeah, it's the first time we're in the same car, but we have driven together before, so yeah, it's nice.
First time in the same car, that'll be a pretty nice experience to get that under your belt.
Yeah, it's been good so far. So now we just see for this race and for tomorrow.
And obviously we do need to ask about this race, although there hasn't been much of a race. So how are the conditions out there when you were out there?
It's a lot of spray, a bit of aquaplaning, So yeah, it's quite tricky to drive in. But yeah, we'll see if it dries up a bit, then I think it should be possible to get some laps.
And you've had experience of both single-seaters and GT cars now. So just tell us a little bit about the difference between the spray and the difference between the conditions in single-seaters versus something like this.
Well, in single-seater, it's harder to see anything. You get very wet here. It's nice. You don't get wet. But the car is a lot heavier, so for me, it's a bit harder to feel the car, how it reacts in this weather compared to the Formulas.
Yeah, you're being kept nice and dry by that roof, aren't you?
Yeah.
More than I can say. All right, guys, that's Noah Stromsted down here. We'll go back up to you.
Well, while we were talking to Noah, we've had the latest update and bulletin through, which is that there is no restart to this race and that team members are to push their cars back to Parc Fermé under Marshall's supervision. What that means for the Prototype Winter Series race that is scheduled next, I am not quite certain as of yet. I am doing the time-honoured protocol, which is to check the Giedlick Racing app. That is the answer to every question that gets asked in the race control area, but there is no elaboration yet as to whether there will be a Prototype Winter Series race, but we can confirm that the GT Winter Series race is concluded. And with that, with the number of laps we've done, it's half points. Ergo, Jamo Hartling and Kenneth Heyer have done enough. They will be the 2024 GT Winter Series champions. It's the number 11 SR Motorsport team. Jamo Hartling and Kenneth Heyer scoring half points in this race for second in the standings in GT3 class will claim the 2024 GT Winter Series, despite Racar Motorsport's Leandro Martins officially sitting fifth, in the overall standings, and of course winning Cup 2, even with a winning haul of points halved. It's still not enough to bring the championship into Sunday. So Jamo Hartling and Kenneth Heyer, that very effective mix of experience and young talent, will be our champions.
And deservedly so. They've done a terrific job all season long, really. They've obviously had the pace, but they've had the consistency too, and it is a cliche, but consistency really is what wins championships. Even a relatively short championship such as this, there's been enough races and enough opportunities to squander points that they have not done. You know, they've managed to bank points when they can, so deserving champions. Not the way they would have liked to have done it, of course. They'd rather go out fighting and racing their way to a championship, but they did their hard work in the weeks prior to this weekend, and as a result, absolutely deserve the accolade that they will get.
And to your point, only once this season have they finished outside of the top five. They have finished every single race. So that is exactly right. It has been that consistency that has led Jamo Hartling and Kenneth Heyer to provisionally, as always, claim the championship in the GT Winter Series. I know that Heyer and Hartling will be delighted with that. SR Motorsport, an offshoot of Schnitzelauern Racing. They're kind of introducing that SR Motorsport moniker, I think maybe primarily to take pity on English-speaking motorsport commentators who struggle with Schnitzelauern. They're moving forward into international racing. I believe there's a full season to come in ADAC GT Masters for the first time after dipping toes in that water towards the end of last year, and that's great momentum for them. And not the first time that the organisation has done it either. Of course, Mikael Sander, along with Marcel Maršovics back in 2021-2022 season, won the GT Winter Series in a BMW M240i. Of course, championship points in this series are scored in the classes, and back when we had the GT4s and just about everything else also on the same grid, that meant that that could happen even up against GT3 cars. But a huge congratulations to the organisation and, of course, to Kenneth Heyer and Jamo Hartling.
When have you ever known a team to go easy on commentators? Usually if there's a way to confuse us more, they will leap at the opportunity. Identical liveries, really difficult to pronounce names, team names that have a hidden meaning within them that may or may not get you in trouble. I've seen it all, and they will go out of their way sometimes to make our lives a little bit more difficult.
There's a meaning behind Fossetti Motorsport. They will not tell me. Ooh. Which leads me to believe it might be that latter thing you said. Something that would get us in trouble. They've hinted to me, but they've never told me the meaning of Forsetti Motorsport. But that is one of the big stories as well, the fact that they came in provisionally, again, overall champions in the GT4 Win Series. So we've crowned 2 champions on a provisional basis here today. That team was effectively a piece of paper and a pipe dream in December, from what I'm told by Matt George. And here they are now, massive truck, multiple cars, ready for a full season tilt at British GT and also the GT Cup UK Championship. And yeah, it's really impressive to see that level of success so early in a team's career or team's existence. And then equally, you've got SR Motorsport, you've got Schnitzelalm, who not only have been doing this whole motorsport thing for a while, but they've been with us in the GT Win Series for a long time too. And that's how you can tell that a team has an interesting background. There's a map of a Nordschleifer in the cockpit there, you can see on the right side of the corner.
Yes, Nordschleifer-esque conditions today as well, so that car will feel very at home if nothing else, but J-Mo Hartling lightly out. Oh no, he is still in the car. You can see his hand there, bottom left of screen, helping to manoeuvre the car into the correct position. Of all the jobs a racing driver has to do, actually, this is one of the trickier ones. At low speed, these cars do not want to go where you point them, especially when they're being pushed in reverse down a pit lane. But all of the cars, it's quite a bizarre sight, actually, out of our commentary box window. All of the cars being pushed the wrong way down the pit lane towards Parc Fermé, which is at the pit entry end of the pits, where they will be checked over, make sure that they're all legal. And that is why, one of the reasons why we always say provisional results, provisional champion. You never know what could be discovered. They go over the cars with a fine-tooth comb after the races, just to ensure that everything is above board. We want the fairest competition possible, but I'm sure that the SR Motorsport team have made sure they're sticking to the rules.
Thank you very much. You've teed me up for the point I was going to make prior to our interview with Noah Stromstead there. I was talking about incremental improvements to the GT Win Series package. One of them being that we've got the DMSB scrutineering bay with us for the first time this weekend, which means that the process of checking cars are within the parameters of legality is both more efficient, quicker and more thorough than it's ever been prior. Of course, another big improvement to the GT Winter Series and the Win Series package as a whole in recent times has been Mick Food as well. We didn't have them prior to this season, our hospitality partners for this year. And I'll tell you, across the 6 rounds, I've got a good, thorough sample of their work. Very good indeed.
I concur. I had the pasta today. Very, very nice indeed. So, yes, oh, sorry, Adam, you're looking at me with a look of shock and indignation. I'm afraid I did put an order through for delivery. Did it not make it to you?
Oh, no, I just realised I forgot lunch. I don't think I've ever forgotten lunch in my life.
So engrossed have you been in the action on track?
Genuine. I was so focused on making sure I could get here in good time to the wrong side of the circuit that I completely forgot. I was wondering why I was hungry.
Hungry for more racing, I'm sure you mean. That's what we all want.
I didn't have breakfast. I thought full lunch later on, it'll be fine. That explains a lot. Okay, well, there we are. I shouldn't be in charge of my own life. The prototype Winter Series race start has been delayed from its scheduled time. That has been confirmed on the timing screen. No surprises on that front. Of course, the schedule in general was shifted earlier on in the day. This race was meant to get started at 4:45 p.m. local time, which is not happening. So they say. There is, though, more than likely championship-winning car, provisional championship-winning car, J-Mo Hartling and Kenneth Heyer's number 11 car. But there it is, being wheeled back to Parc Fermé. I very much enjoy the fact that they've covered the car quite so thoroughly, as you said. But Andy, I think they're strategically positioning there as well, aren't they? They're making sure that the engine doesn't get flooded. But again, J-Mo and Kenneth taking it. And actually, there's a point. Loney, the name of the car. I should credit the car for the championship as well. They're one of those teams that name all of their cars.
I always enjoy listening to the backstories of teams who have certain names for their cars. And I've heard it all. They've been named after countries, people, animals. Certainly racetracks, I'm sure, have been an inspiration for the name of a team or indeed a car. And again, it's the kind of thing that you only learn sometimes from those strange conversations you have late at night with team managers or drivers, and they let you into the secrets in that way. But there the number 11 car goes, pushed back into Parc Fermé. I think a little confusion perhaps as to exactly what's going on with regards to race results and point scoring and whatnot, but I've learnt already today that in all of those such matters I defer to my far more knowledgeable colleague, and in doing so I put all of the pressure on him to make sure that the information we're getting is correct.
Yes, well the system in general with our Winter Series Championships here at Giedlick Racing is 2 laps or more of a race taking place means half points until we get above a 50% distance. Therefore, there will be half points scored in this race, and that means that even if this race was cancelled still, and we didn't score points for this race, there still wouldn't be enough races left for Schnitzelarm Racing to be superseded anyway in the championship, because there'd only be 2 races left with 19-ish points left available. Again, those decimal points make it hard. Yes, regardless of whether this race scores points or not, it would be sealed for SR Motorsport. However, they will have half points for their second place finish within the GT3 category. So I understand Kenneth Heyer wasn't quite sure down in the pit lane, but I can assure him that unless the car doesn't pass checks or something like that, that is the championship-winning car. He is the championship-winning driver alongside J-Mo Hartling. And Kenneth Heyer, I mean, we've talked a lot about J-Mo's talent. Kenneth, 44 years of age, and has drove in Leon Supercopa Germany, GT Masters for a long time as well. Even the latter days of FIA GT before they separated off into the GT1 and GT2 championships. He's done just about everything there is to do. Now focuses a lot more on developing both cars and talent. And I think him getting a win in, as he called it himself, the latter 5th of his own racing career, I think that would mean a lot to him.
He says that, but as we've seen in GT racing in particular, you can kind of go on and on and on and on and on, can't you? Know, we have drivers in their 70s who are buying brand new GT2 cars to go racing around Europe in. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's getting towards the end of his career. I hope not, because he's quite clearly still got a lot of talent and, more importantly, a lot of passion for the sport. You know, he wouldn't be investing so much time, effort and money into other drivers, into the team, if he wasn't still sort of, you know, finding some serious motivation. It takes a lot of motivation to get out of bed on a wet and cold Saturday morning here at Barcelona to go and drive a car at a very wet circuit in order to try and win a Winter Series Championship. So the fact he's even here proves that he's still got quite a lot invested in this, and I suspect we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in the years to come. One of the good things about GT3 cars in particular, they are very user-friendly, so regardless really of what your experience level is, you should really be able to jump into one of these cars if you've got any sort of driving ability at all, and at least get a half-decent lap time out of them. That's one of the big appeals of GT3 racing in particular. Absolutely, and of course, if you're unfamiliar with Kenneth Heyer's backstory, he is still signed to Mercedes-AMG as a driver, and kind of does a lot of development for them. He goes back to 2010 when they were developing the SLS GT3, the first Mercedes AMG GT3 product, and he was instrumental doing thousands of kilometers in that thing, and every subsequent car as well has had the Kenneth Heyer touch at some point in its development. He's very much considered a valuable asset to the Mercedes AMG organisation. And yeah, just brilliant to see that he's getting another accolade here alongside J-Mo Hartling. J-Mo, who incidentally made his GT3 car debut with us in Estoril at the start of the year. So his very first attempt at racing a GT3. He will be a champion in his first full season in a GT3 car. And he's about to do 2 free years, as in 2 complementary years, of GT3 racing within the German GTC Race Championship. He won a shootout back in October. There's an annual shootout with the prize being 2 free years of driving a GT3 car in that championship. So he's got
quite the GT3 platform ahead of him. He doesn't come from the biggest financial background, so he's got quite the leg up there, quite the opportunity to show himself off to a lot of the teams that also pair that championship with GT Masters. A lot of our teams also, of course, compete in World Challenge, GT Masters, DTM, whatever it may be. So JMO at the moment is doing a fabulous job of putting himself in the shop window.
Absolutely. And nice to hear he gets 2 years as well. I've always thought that a lot of scholarship programs, it's a 1-year program. So you throw a driver into a brand new car, a brand new championship, a brand new set of racetracks that perhaps they've not really driven much before, and then expect them to learn everything in a year. Well, you take the whole first year to learn your way around it and then go into the second season with certainly a lot more experience. I think perhaps off the top of my head, the Porsche scholarship, one of the few that give you a 2-year program, certainly within the UK anyway. And I've always felt that that's, time and again, you see the scholarship drivers do reasonably well season 1, and then they're a championship contender the second season round. So I think that's a really sensible way to do it.
It is, definitely. And you do see the occasional driver arcing back to the F4 grid that jumps in immediately and does incredibly well. Matej Guadiš has been doing that with us in Formula Wind Series. But a lot of them need a season. And I think even in single-seater junior racing in particular, that's lost on a lot of people now. It's like, why isn't he winning? Why isn't Antonelli immediately dominating F2? Well, it's because sometimes you need a moment to find your footing, even if you're the next prodigy of motorsport. It does happen. Lewis Hamilton's first year in Formula 3 wasn't that remarkable. And he almost lost his backing from McLaren and Mercedes in that period of time. It does happen. Speaking of Formula 4, actually, I will say, Keanu Al-Azari, who of course was a championship contender in F4 UAE over the winter months, he actually did some testing in an LMP3 car here on Wednesday and Thursday. Actually on Wednesday, and that was with Molnar Motorsport for their shootout program, and he has won himself a seat, complimentary seat in the Prototype Cup Germany series with Molnar Motorsport. So he said it to me, he's keeping his options open. He's focused on that single-seater ladder, but he also wants to get some prototype experience in, hypercar being the luscious Everglade that it is at the moment for drivers. Keanu, a very, very hot prospect. And that's a big. I think Molnar Motorsport will be as happy with that, even though they're giving away the seat, as Keanu himself. I believe the entry fee for people in the shootout was €5,000. They got track time at various of our events in the last few months, and now at Barcelona as well. And for €5,000 investment, Keanu has got himself a full seat in Prototype Cup Germany.
Wow, and that is, as you quite rightly said, the place to be really now. I think a lot of drivers are realising if you want to make money out of this and you want to be successful to the very highest level within single-seaters, there are probably 20 drivers in the world who are achieving that right now, and they are the 20 drivers lining up on the Formula 1 grid. But outside of that, it's an awful lot of work. You have to pump an awful lot of money into it, and you're far from guaranteed to get anything out of it. But I do think that the GT and sports car racing route, drivers are realising most definitely now that they can make a little bit of money. They can certainly get to the very top level of racing in that category an awful lot easier. So I think, hedging your bets a little bit, not a bad way to go. And a lot of single-seater drivers these days making that transition over to prototype racing with some serious success as well. It was the case for a while, really, that you went through the GT racing ranks if you wanted to go racing prototypes. These days, it is the single-seater drivers getting that opportunity and making the most of it.
And of course, the GT3 to World Endurance pipeline is now massively strong. I look at Darren Lung from British GT, from your neck of the woods, who's now in the World Endurance Championship looking across the garage at Valentino Rossi. I know Darren, I've been texting him about that, saying, that must be cool. He, of course, was racing GT Winter Series last year. He was here with Schubert Motorsport, getting his eye in with a GT3 car at the start of last year. He went on to win the British GT or well, to win, but he went on to have a great British GT champion. Did they win the championship?
Yes, I believe they did.
They did,
I believe
didn't
they
they?
did, yes.
Harper and Lund did win the championship. I had a little brain freeze there.
It was very close. There were lots who could have won it, but I think, I do seem to recall them coming out on top.
Donington Decider doing Donington Decider things. He's had an absolutely incredible 18 months in a GT3 car, made those first steps here, and is now in the World Endurance Championship with a team of the caliber of WRT. So that says it all, really. Unfortunately, I do have to say the most recent bulletin that's come up on our timing screen, and it's something that I've been told about already by my Giedlick Racing colleague Stefan Lerner, and that is that the Prototype Wind Series race is unfortunately cancelled due to the weather and track conditions, and that unfortunately means no more racing today. That is going to be the conclusion of our racing program, unfortunately. We haven't had much racing to speak of with the conditions as they are, sadly. But again, this static shot of turn one kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? It doesn't look promising or friendly out there.
Very easy when you're sat on a sofa at home looking at these pictures saying, well, I'd go out in that. If I had the chance to go and race a prototype around Catalonia, I'd do it regardless of the conditions. But believe me, when you're here in person, you can see the track, you can see just how difficult it was. I think, you know, the amount of issues we've had at very low speed, even behind the safety car today, goes to show how treacherous it is. And I think this is absolutely a sensible, regrettable, but a sensible decision that's been taken by Race Control. We've got another day. The forecast, touch wood, is better for tomorrow, and we should hopefully have a dry and, whisper it, sunny afternoon. So I'm hoping that we'll get everything in tomorrow, and it's better just to keep everyone in one piece, all of their cars in one piece as well, so that we can put on a really good show to see the season out in style on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely right. The final day of the Wind Series season is always a really good time as well. We've all been driving around Iberia together in a convoy, and that will be, you know, a great send off on Sunday. We're expecting far better conditions. We're expecting our full quota of races, and of course we've got some brilliant entry lists as well. Season highs for the Prototype Wind Series, for the GT Winter Series. Always seem to have 35 plus cars in formulas, which is a really wonderful problem to have, and then the GT4s as strong as ever as well. So we will have a full program of fabulous racing on Sunday, but the weather has done what the weather has done. That hasn't stopped us, though, declaring some champions for SETI Motorsport. Mikey Porter, Jamie Day, they will have the overall championship going into Winter Series Sunday in the GT4 Winter Series, and Kenneth Heyer and Jamo Hartling will have secured the championship with the half points scored in this race in the GT Wind Series. And I understand that Izzy Browning is down there with the newest GT Wind Series champions.
I am indeed. I'm with our GT Winter Series champions, Kenneth Heyer and Jamo Hartling. We found some shelter under the podium. So, guys, champions of the GT Winter Series. I mean, possibly not the way you would have wanted to do it, but still, nonetheless, you are champions.
Yeah, it feels a bit strange after today. We did not do something for it, but at the end, yeah, I think it's half points. It's enough for us. We've been champion, I think. A little bit later we will realize it was a long winter time with a lot of races. Rocket Man is going every weekend faster and faster and faster. For me as an old guy, it's pretty amazing to see. Yeah, I think in a few hours it will have an impact on us. And in the moment it feels a bit strange because we want to race, and Jamo was prepared really well for today, so yeah.
Well, you may not have done anything today, but you have done stuff all season to be in this position. Obviously, Jamo, we saw some fantastic drives from you last weekend in Aragon. So what does it mean to take this championship?
Incredible feeling for me. It was the first championship in a GT3 car, and with Kenneth we found a very good pairing together, and I'm very happy. Today it was a little bit weird, but I'm thankful for all of this, and a really big thanks to my completely team.
And you guys as well. I mean, you get along so well, clearly. You're a great pair together. So you must be amazing to be able to bring this home for the team with both of you.
Yeah, the Schnitzel Alm racing team itself is pretty based on yeah, that everybody is a team member and not just coming for a year or second. The goal from Thomas and Connie is that the people introduce themselves into the team, stay, getting friends and be successful together. So it's quite a big difference to a lot of other teams. I do it now for more than 20 years and it's really one of the top 3 teams I've ever driven. The people are all nice, so they have a basic stepper with Tim and Marcel, Yo-Yo and all the guys being together for more than a decade. So this is something you want to give something back to Thomas for sure, and to the rest of the guys. So the same with him. So he's producing these kids, and Marcel was the first one. Now the second one we have Tim Neuser as well, who's preparing a lot of good things, working his ass off and driving fast. So it's a special place.
Yeah, the other team should be worried about you guys then. So pressure's off for tomorrow. So is it just going to be a fun drive tomorrow?
No, I think we're pushing already and look forward that we win the 2 races.
All right, well, best of luck for tomorrow. You are our champions. Go and celebrate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, there's our GT Winter Series champions. They're going to go off and celebrate, and we're going to head back up to Adam.
Oh, a Schnitzelhaum post-party. Oh, my word. I know what those are like. I think the main party will come on Sunday evening, but they will celebrate this evening their GT Win Series title. Fassetti Motorsport will be celebrating their GT4 Win Series overall championship. Pro Class still up in the air between themselves and Joel Mesh. This first day of the Win Series weekend always feels like a bit of a run-in, a prelude, if you will, before the first full day of racing on Sunday. Wall-to-wall racing to come on the Sunday broadcast. But Andy, you've had your first half day, and then about 10% of the half day actually in the GT Win Series and the support categories. How are you feeling?
I feel great. I mean, I feel like I've cheated a little bit today because I've rocked up at lunchtime. I've sat behind the podium and eaten some very lovely pasta, and not really had to do an awful lot of work. But that will all change tomorrow, that's for sure. As I said, hoping for a full day of racing tomorrow. The little glimpses we've seen today through practice this morning and the few laps of green flag racing we've had certainly suggests we've got some close racing to come. Definitely, you know, big grids, but competitive grids as well. So I do think we're going to have a great day tomorrow. This rain is going to clear out, and we'll get a little bit of Spanish sunshine to see the season off.
Exactly. Well, with our cameramen thankfully given a reprieve from the wet conditions, they're all headed back to base and then back to the hotel. We are going to do much the same. Make sure you join us for a full quota of races from the Prototype Win Series, GT4 Win Series, Formula Win Series and the GT Win Series, which will race into the evening on Sunday night. It's going to be an exciting programme of action to bring you. Of course, no Grand Prix on Sunday evening either, so more and more reason to join us on Sunday for the final day of the Giedlick Racing Win Series. But for now, from myself, Adam Weller, from Andy McEwen alongside me, and Easy Browning, hopefully already drying off in the office. Have a great evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow, bright and early, for all the action.